The stars above Houston, Texas, flickered oddly that summer night as though something massive briefly eclipsed them. Commander Eliza Reyes of NASA dismissed initial reports until similar anomalies appeared over Beijing, Moscow, New Delhi, and Johannesburg all simultaneously. 3 days later they arrived. The Tsar Coffee vessel descended through clouds with elegant precision, hovering above the United Nations Plaza in New York, while billions watched live streams around the world, its crystalline surface shimmering with blues and purples unlike any material known to human science. Ambassador Vexilor stood over 7 feet tall with iridescent scales and 4 arms moving in hypnotic precision, addressing the hastily assembled world leaders with a voice that seemed to bypass ears and resonate directly in the mind. We bring greetings from the Galactic Harmonious Expansion 300 systems strong. We have watched your world for decades and deemed you ready for elevation. Humans cheered in streets worldwide as Vexilor displayed holograms of gleaming cities, advanced medicine, and ships that traveled between stars and dazed promises of technology to end climate crisis, cure diseases, and extend human lifespans by centuries. Behind closed doors, the Tsar Coffee cataloged Earth differently. Subject World Designation Sol 3, classified as Death World Category 4 Native Dominant Species, shows concerning aggression patterns and resistance to standard suppression protocols. Estimated labor capacity, excellent minimal projected loss during processing phase. Resource extraction potential exceeds standard parameters by 270%. In the private chambers of the UN Secretary-General, Vexilor presented the Accord of Galactic Citizenship, a document 5,000 pages, long, written in both English and the flowing script of the Tsar Coffee. Jeremiah Chin, xenolinguistics specialist assigned to review portions, noticed subtle discrepancies between translations, but her concerns were brushed aside by officials eager to access alien technology before the ceremony. President Liu of China questioned why the Tsar Coffee needed such extensive access to Earth mineral deposits. For calibration purposes only, Vexilor assured with a gesture that somehow made everyone in the room feel simultaneously calm and slightly sluggish. Compatible technologies require compatible materials native to each world. In orbit, 12 larger vessels remained cloaked, their weapon systems powered down, but targeting grids already mapping Earth defense infrastructure. The cargo holds contained not cultural exchange materials, but prefabricated processing centers and neural suppression field generators enough to blanket an entire planet. Victor Roth, special advisor to the American president, studied the aliens with calculating eyes, seeing opportunity where others saw only salvation or threat, his ambition already plotting how to position himself favorably in whatever new order might emerge. The treaty signing ceremony took place exactly 2 weeks after first contact, broadcast globally as a historic moment for humanity. Cameras lingered on the gleaming pen used by each world leader to sign their names to the document, none noticing the microscopic scanner in the pen collecting genetic samples from each signatory. Afterwards, Vexilor raised 4 arms in what humans interpreted as celebration. The preparation begins now. In 6 cycles we return with the gifts promised. As the Tsar Coffee ships departed Earth, celebrated with unprecedented global unity festivals, parades, and religious ceremonies, hailing the dawn of a new era for humanity. Alone in her laboratory, Dershen ran another translation program on a copy of the treaty. She had secured the results, finally rendering on her screen as her blood ran cold. The document contained not partnership but ownership Earth, and all its inhabitants now classified as resource extraction colonies. ZK 4,955, subject to the full authority of the Tsar Coffee sovereign. She reached for her phone, then hesitated. Who would believe her? Who could she possibly warn? In orbit, the Tsar Coffee commander sent the confirmation signal to the Empire fleet. Acquisition phase complete. Harvesting begins soon. 6 months passed with humanity fevered with anticipation. Governments scrambled to prepare landing zones, cultural centers, and diplomatic quarters for their new galactic benefactors. Jeremiah Chen tried desperately to warn officials about her translation findings, but found herself suddenly reassigned to remote research stations Whenever she gained traction, her communications mysteriously failed. Her evidence disappeared from secure servers. The Tsar coffee ships returned on schedule, but not 12 as before. Hundreds darkened skies, worldwide massive vessels casting shadows over major cities, their elegant designs now somehow threatening in their scale and number. Ambassador Vexlor addressed the United Nations once more. The integration process begins today. The gifts of advancement await your worthy species. The first pods descended, sleek crystalline structures, each the size of a skyscraper, landing in precisely mapped locations across every continent. Within hours, a strange humming began emanating from each structure, subtle at first, then increasingly insistent. Jake Donovan, former Special Forces, now security consultant, felt it first. While guarding a diplomatic meeting in Chicago, a pressure behind his eyes, a sluggishness in his thoughts around him. People swayed slightly as though drunk, their eyes growing distant. Something is wrong, he managed to radio before his team collapsed around him. Fighting the growing fog in his mind, he dragged himself toward an exit before collapsing against a wall. When humanity awakened, they were no longer in control. The neural suppression fields activated simultaneously worldwide, blanking human minds long enough for Tsar Kothi ground forces to secure strategic position. Soldiers with 4 arms and iridescent armor moved efficiently through streets, directing blank-faced humans into processing lines. Victor Roth awoke to find Vexlor in his office. You display ambition and pragmatism qualities we value. The ambassador seemed almost approving. We require efficient humans to manage the labor units. You will serve this function. Roth looked out his window at the endless lines of docile humans being cataloged and directed into new roles. What choice do I have? An excellent question, the ambassador replied. Across the globe, the suppression field strength varied by region. Curiously, humans required nearly 5 times the standard power compared to other conquered species. Tsar Kothi engineers made adjustments with increasing frustration as equipment strained beyond intended parameters. Turchen found herself inside a research facility, her mind partly clear due to an experimental neural implant. She had designed her hands move mechanically, sorting tissue samples while her thoughts remained partially her own. The samples were human tissue. The Tsar Kothi were studying human neurophysiology with confused urgency. In Chicago, Jake Donovan lay in a processing center, his mind fighting through waves of imposed calm memories of his daughter, lost in a car accident years before, surged through him, intense grief tearing holes in the artificial tranquility. With each emotional surge, his thoughts cleared briefly. He noticed others near him, following orders robotically, but a woman nearby seemed to hesitate, her movements slightly uncoordinated, her eyes occasionally focusing with awareness. Jake concentrated on his most painful memory, the grief like fire burning through the alien influence. Suddenly his mind cleared completely, the suppression field still pressing but no longer controlling. He carefully maintained his blank expression while observing his surroundings. The Tsar Kothi moved with supreme confidence, their attention focused on efficiency, not security. Jake caught the eye of the hesitant woman and saw recognition flicker there. Something about intense emotion disrupted the control. 3 months into occupation, the Tsar Kothi encountered increasing anomalies, equipment failures, mysterious accidents, and humans requiring ever stronger suppression fields. In their command ship, the overseer reviewed reports with growing concern. Why are the primates requiring field strength increases? They are primitive, barely spacefaring creatures. Admiral Kraz Torn shifted uncomfortably. There is something unusual about their neural structures. Preliminary research suggests they may have evolved under conditions we did not fully account for. The overseer dismissed this with a gesture. Increase production quotas. These setbacks are temporary. All species submit eventually. The Tsar Kothi Scientific Directorate convened an emergency session 3 months into Earth occupation, their elegant meeting chamber aboard the command ship filled with increasingly agitated discussions. Senior researcher Mevlak displayed brain scan comparisons between humans and previously conquered species. Observe the neural activity patterns. Humans show unprecedented variability in response to standard suppression fields. Furthermore, their brains appear to be adapting, forming new pathways around affected regions. Field Commander Thox growled with impatience. Increase the field strength. then these primitives cannot possibly resist our technology. We already have Mevlak countered the generators are operating at nearly 5 times standard capacity, causing equipment failures and energy drain across all sectors. Worse still, the effect appears temporary. Humans require steadily increasing dosages. In the Sydney Mineral Processing Facility, Sarah Mackenzie, geologist, now working as an extraction drone, felt moments of clarity growing longer each day around her. Thousands of humans worked robotically sorting rare earth elements for Zarkothi shipment. Sarah noticed a pattern: the suppression field weakened during solar flares. She surreptitiously studied the facility layout during her brief moments of awareness, carefully memorizing guard rotations and field generator positions. Meanwhile, Jake Donovan had successfully maintained his facade of compliance while secretly testing his theory about emotional resistance. After weeks of observation, he identified 12 others in his work unit who showed signs of fighting the influence. During meal periods, he engineered brief physical contacts, brushing hands against potential allies while projecting intense emotional memories. These small connections slowly built a covert resistance cell, communicating through tap codes and subtle gestures. Turchen, working in the Beijing Research Center, made her breakthrough when assigned to study apparent anomalies in human neural responses. She confirmed what she had suspected: humans possessed unique neuroplasticity, our brains constantly adapting to new conditions. The Zarkothi had never encountered a species with such dynamic neural restructuring, evolved from millions of years of surviving changing threats on a volatile planet. More concerning to the aliens, human emotional states demonstrated extraordinary intensity. Scans showed emotion centers in human brains lighting up with activity levels far exceeding Zarkothi parameters. While cataloging these findings, Turchen secretly encoded resistance information into her research data, knowing the Zarkothi would distribute her work to all research centers handling humans. Victor Roth, now administrator for North American Resource Extraction, witnessed his first execution of failed worker units with carefully hidden horror: the casual disposal of humans, unable to maintain productivity quotas, shook something fundamental in him. That night, reviewing facility schematics, he noticed subtle inefficiencies in the suppression field coverage pattern, small blind spots appearing at regular intervals, possibly deliberate sabotage by someone in the engineering division. The Zarkothi, meanwhile, faced mounting issues across all Earth facilities. Production consistently fell 15% below projections. Equipment failure rates exceeded all historical records. Inexplicable accidents occurred with statistical improbability. Admiral Kraz Torn submitted his assessment to the overseer. The humans display concerning adaptability, recommend immediate increase in security protocols, and accelerated resource extraction timeline. The overseer dismissed these concerns with characteristic arrogance. 300 worlds have fallen to our methods. This primitive planet cannot possibly resist. Unbeknownst to the occupiers, a network was forming. Turchen's encoded data spread between research facilities, giving resistance cells crucial information about suppression technology. Jake Donovan's emotion resistance technique propagated through worker housing areas. Sarah Mackenzie's observations about solar interference circulated among mining teams. Across Earth, humans began exploiting the system, creating tiny inefficiencies, working slightly slower, breaking equipment in ways that appeared accidental, learning to navigate the edges of their neural prisons. 1 year into occupation, the Zarkothi faced an unprecedented situation. Resource extraction remained 30% below minimum acceptable levels. Neural suppression generator failures increased weekly maintenance costs, exceeded extraction profits. In the Phoenix Command Center, a junior technician noticed an anomalous pattern in communication networks between human worker units, coded messages hidden in seemingly random maintenance requests, equipment failures, and shift change patterns. Before the technician could report this discovery, a power fluctuation temporarily disabled local monitoring systems. By the time systems restored, the evidence had disappeared. The occupation entered its 2nd year when the Australian mining complex experienced what would later be called the First Awakening. A massive solar flare Category X9 erupted from the sun, bathing Earth's southern hemisphere in electromagnetic radiation, precisely as Sarah Mackenzie had anticipated. The suppression field generators, already straining to maintain control over the human workers, faltered completely. Banks of equipment overheated and failed, cascading failures spreading across the facility. Sarah dropped her mining tools as clarity flooded her mind. Around her, 300 miners simultaneously regained consciousness. Confusion quickly replaced by understanding. "We have 15 minutes before backup systems engage," she announced to the stunned workers, pointing to a maintenance worker. "Get to the control room, lock down communications." Unlike the Zarkothi, who relied on sophisticated weaponry and neural technology, the newly awakened humans turned to improvised weapons, mining tools, heavy equipment, and their intimate knowledge of the facility. Sarah led a team to the generator room, where she'd memorized the layout. During her moments of clarity, they systematically disabled the equipment, not just damaging but reconfiguring components to prevent easy repair. She instructed workers to gather specific parts and circuit boards. These would be crucial for Der Chen's research if they could be transported to resistance cells. The Zarkothi guards responded with typical efficiency, but faced an unexpected situation. Humans who showed no fear, who coordinated without communication technology, who used the facility's layout against the invaders. Researcher Mevlak watched security feeds with growing alarm as humans deliberately sacrificed themselves to allow others to complete objectives. This behavior contradicts all models, the researcher noted. The calculated acceptance of individual termination to achieve group objectives appears unprecedented in non-hive species. The rebellion lasted 43 minutes before Zarkothi reinforcements arrived from orbit. By then, Sarah and 38 miners had escaped with critical components and information, while the facility lay in ruins. News of the Australian incident spread through the resistance network like wildfire. Der Chen, receiving the stolen components, immediately recognized their significance. The suppression technology relied on predictable brainwave patterns. Humans were anything but predictable. Our neural variability eventually overloaded the system. Jake Donovan, now coordinating resistance cells across North America, received Sarah's report through the growing underground network. His team successfully raided a lightly guarded communications outpost, capturing intact a Zarkothi transmission array, the first complete alien technology to fall into resistance hands. Der Chen, working with engineers who had broken conditioning, began reverse engineering the array, discovering not only how it functioned, but how to access the Zarkothi communication network. What she found shocked even her. The Zarkothi Empire had conquered over 300 worlds, yet Earth was classified differently from all others. Threat assessment protocol analysis, subject species, humans, estimated resistance capacity, extreme adaptive potential, unprecedented, recommend immediate resource extraction, followed by planetary sterilization. Chen transmitted this finding through the resistance network, confirming what many had suspected: the Zarkothi feared humanity. Victor Roth, now with full access to North American operations, discovered something equally significant. Reviewing supply allocation reports, he noticed the occupiers were diverting alarming resources to weapons platforms in orbit. They're preparing for something big. He encoded this information in maintenance requests transmitted to resistance cells. The Zarkothi leadership convened an emergency session. "The human problem requires immediate resolution," noted the overseer. "This primitive species demonstrates concerning adaptability. We must accelerate extraction and processing." Admiral Kraz Torn studied the latest reports with growing concern. "The humans are not merely resisting, they are learning, evolving, collaborating in ways we have never observed in a conquered species." The overseer dismissed these concerns. "Increase suppression field strength by 20%, deploy combat specialists to all major facilities." In the shadows of the occupation, Earth planned its response. The resistance now possessed critical alien technology samples. Der Chen had decoded their communication protocols. Jake Donovan had trained thousands in emotional resistance techniques. Sarah Mackenzie had proven the occupiers could be defeated. The human resistance formulated Operation Wildfire, a coordinated global action, unlike anything the Zarkothi had ever faced. In his private quarters, Victor Roth studied the operation details. His decision made: he would betray his alien masters and help humanity fight back. Operation Wildfire began with no visible signs, nothing the Zarkothi monitoring systems could detect across 6 continents. Humans simply began to remember. Turchen had discovered something remarkable about the suppression field. Its effectiveness diminished during heightened emotional states, and human emotions were contagious. The resistance spread a simple meditation technique disguised as a work efficiency protocol through labor camps, processing centers, and mining operations worldwide, encouraging humans to focus on specific emotional memories at synchronized times. At precisely 300 Greenwich Mean Time, emotional surges rippled through human populations. Everywhere, grief, rage, hope, love, all amplified and synchronized, overloading local suppression fields for precious seconds. In those moments, resistance cells activated, passing information, recruiting new members, and sabotaging critical systems. These momentary awakenings, too brief for Zarkothi systems to detect, repeated daily, slowly strengthening the underground network. Victor Roth witnessed the public execution of an entire worker housing sector after production quotas fell below acceptable levels. The casual brutality of watching children and elderly alike disposed of as failed resources broke something fundamental in him. That night, he contacted a resistance cell using codes had discovered in maintenance requests. "I want to help. What do you need?" Jake Donovan, now coordinating the North American resistance, received Roth's message with skepticism, but recognized the potential value of such a high-placed informant. "Access codes to the communication network. Get us those first, then we'll talk." Sarah Mackenzie, meanwhile, had established a training program teaching former miners how to disrupt suppression fields by creating localized electromagnetic pulses. Her team specialized in lightning raids against Zarkothi supply convoys disappearing into the outback before reinforcements arrived. Across Earth, similar groups formed, each developing specialized tactics suited to their environments and resources. Forest fighters in Brazil, mountain guerrillas in the Himalayas, urban saboteurs in former megacities, the resistance adapting to every terrain like humanity always had. Dirk Shen, working in what had once been Johns Hopkins University, made her most significant breakthrough, yet analyzing thousands of brain scans, she confirmed humans were developing natural immunity to the suppression technology. The human brain is rewiring itself, she encoded in transmissions to resistance cells. Evolution, accelerated by selective pressure at current rates. Children born now will be completely immune within 2 generations. The Zarkothi noticed their deteriorating control, deploying specialized hunters to track resistance cells. These bioengineered predators, designed specifically to counter human physiology and psychology, proved initially effective, capturing several cell leaders for public termination. Admiral Kraz Torn personally interrogated captured resistance members. "How are you communicating?" he demanded. "We detect no unauthorized transmissions, no technology signatures." A captured engineer smiled through broken teeth. "We use everything you ignore: emotions, music patterns, graffiti, ancient methods you consider primitive, but they work because you can't understand them." The admiral executed the human personally, but reported the troubling findings to the overseer. "They adapt faster than predicted, using methods outside our scanning parameters." The overseer remained unmoved. "Deploy the Harbingers, release the combat specialists." The Harbingers arrived 3 days later, massive bioengineered killing machines designed specifically for human psychology, their very appearance triggering primal fear in human brains. They moved through resistant strongholds with devastating efficiency. Yet even this, the humans adapted to. Jake Donovan, discovering the creatures relied on sensing fear, taught resistance fighters to channel different emotions. Rage worked best, confusing the creatures' targeting systems. Victor Roth provided the resistance with something even more valuable: security protocols for the orbital platforms, the vast ships maintaining the global suppression network, their vulnerabilities, their maintenance schedules, their command codes. Turchen synthesized all this intelligence into Operation Uprising, the most ambitious coordinated human action since the occupation began. 2 years after the Zarkothi arrived, humanity prepared for war, not with advanced weapons, but with something the aliens had never encountered before: the uniquely human capacity to adapt, overcome, improvise, and above all, hope against impossible odds. In orbit, Admiral Kraz Torn studied reports of increasing resistance effectiveness with growing unease. They learn too quickly, they adapt faster than any species we have encountered. What if we underestimated them? Operation Uprising commenced exactly 2 years after the initial occupation began with perfect synchronization across all continents. Shen had perfected a neural stimulation technique that temporarily immunized humans to suppression fields, the procedure painful but effective, requiring only basic electrical components and precise application. At precisely midnight local time, major population centers experienced power fluctuations as resistance cells tapped into power grids, creating the electromagnetic pulses needed to disrupt local suppression generators. Jake Donovan led the assault on the North American Control Center, his team of 40 resistance fighters, their minds clear and focused, moving with precision through service tunnels Victor Roth had identified in his intelligence. Unlike the Tsar Kothi, who relied on sophisticated weaponry and hierarchical command structures, the human fighters used improvised weapons, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and decentralized leadership, each capable of continuing the mission if others fell. Inside the Beijing Research Complex, Chen activated her masterwork, a modified version of the suppression field calibrated specifically to Tsar Kothi neural patterns the aliens had never considered their own technology might be turned against them, their brains unprepared for the emotional chaos humans routinely endured. The effect on the occupiers was immediate and devastating. Tsar Kothi commanders experienced fear, uncertainty, and confusion for the first time in their evolutionary history, their rigid hierarchical minds unable to process the emotional overload. Admiral Kraz Torn aboard the orbital command ship watched in mounting horror as facility after facility went dark. Ground forces reporting impossible situations, crowds of humans suddenly coordinated and purposeful, attacking with primitive but effective weapons. Recall all forces to orbital platforms, the Admiral commanded. Initiate sterilization protocols. The command never reached most outposts. Dr. Chen had infiltrated their communication systems, replacing critical transmission protocols with looping error messages. Across Earth, suppression fields failed as humans systematically destroyed generator complexes, freed workers immediately joining resistance cells, knowledge spreading through populations like wildfire. In what had once been Chicago, Jake Donovan reached the control center core, facing the facility commander, a Tsar Kothi scientist who stared at the advancing humans with incomprehension. How can primitives overcome our technology? Impossible. Jake smiled grimly. You made a fundamental mistake treating humans like just another species. We spent our entire evolution adapting, overcoming, surviving. Everything our planet threw at us, your control was just one more challenge. In orbit, Kraz Torn received the final transmission from Victor Roth before his cover was discovered, a complete security protocol for the orbital defense network, including command overrides and weapons systems access codes. The Admiral watched in disbelief as weapons platforms across Earth's orbit suddenly realigned, targeting the Tsar Kothi command ships. The impossible is happening, he reported to the Overseer. The primitives have accessed our orbital defense network. The Overseer, finally comprehending the true threat, ordered immediate evacuation and planetary sterilization. Too late, human resistance forces had already accessed and disabled the planet killer bombs. Using Roth's intelligence, they had prioritized these targets, knowing the Tsar Kothi would attempt scorched earth tactics when defeated. In the Australian outback, Sarah Mackenzie led an assault team against the primary mining complex, her fighters moving with perfect coordination against increasingly disorganized Tsar Kothi defenders. The aliens, unused to feeling fear, made critical tactical errors. Military forces around the world, those who had been kept in suppressed stasis as potential threats, awoke to find their countries under alien occupation, their training and discipline immediately channeled into coordinated assaults against occupier strongholds. Victor Roth, discovered and facing execution, managed one final act of defiance, uploading a virus into the orbital command network, temporarily disabling shields around the primary vessels. The cost of liberation proved high. Millions died in the fighting, entire cities destroyed in desperate Tsar Kothi counterattacks, but humanity prevailed through sheer tenacity and adaptability. As the surviving Zarkothi vessels retreated from Earth's orbit, Admiral Kraz Torn transmitted his final assessment to the Empire. The humans represent unprecedented threat evaluation, recommend immediate quarantine of Sol system capabilities far exceed classification assumptions, suggest revision of conquest protocols and avoidance of similar death worlds. The first month after liberation, Earth focused on rebuilding, treating wounded, and restoring basic infrastructure. But unlike previous human conflicts, this recovery had a different undertone. We are not alone, and they are not friendly. Nations previously at odds found common purpose in the face of an existential threat. The United Earth Defense Council formed within weeks. Representatives from every surviving government gathered in the ruins of Geneva. Admiral Helena Ortega, once commander of the Brazilian Navy, now led the analysis of captured Zarkothi vessels, her team of engineers and scientists working around the clock to understand alien technology. What they discovered exceeded all expectations. They never expected us to capture their ships intact, the admiral reported to the council. The Zarkothi have no security protocols for this scenario. They never imagined a primitive species could defeat them. Turchen, leading the xenobiology research team, made equally startling discoveries. The Zarkothi are not naturally evolved. They have been genetically engineering themselves for millennia, selecting for control and uniformity. At the cost of adaptability, their entire society is built on absolute predictability. The most significant finding came from Jake Donovan, now heading Earth security. His team decrypted the Zarkothi star charts and communication logs. They have enslaved hundreds of worlds, Jake reported, but we aren't the first to resist. Records show 17 other species have attempted rebellion, all failed, but those species were isolated. We have something they did: a complete understanding of Zarkothi technology and star charts. The unprecedented proposal came from Sarah Mackenzie. We need to take the fight to them, she argued, not just defend Earth, but liberate other worlds. The Zarkothi will return with greater forces unless we disrupt their empire. The vote was unanimous. Earth would launch a counteroffensive. Over the next 3 years, humanity repurposed captured Zarkothi vessels, reverse-engineered their technology, and trained crews to operate in space. Engineers improved alien designs, increasing efficiency and performance in ways the Zarkothi had never considered. Turchen developed a revolutionary communication system based on quantum entanglement, allowing instantaneous communication across vast distances, something the Zarkothi had never achieved. The Earth Defense Fleet launched exactly 3 years after liberation. 27 vessels, crewed by international teams, their mission not conquest, but liberation. Admiral Ortega, commanding from the flagship Defiance. We go not as conquerors, but as liberators, he announced to the crew. Humans have known oppression throughout our history. Now we have the chance to end it for others. The fleet first encountered Zarkothi forces at Proxima Centauri, a small mining outpost with enslaved Terraxians, lithe insectoid beings who had been servants for millennia. The battle lasted minutes, not hours. The Zarkothi vessels, unprepared for ships piloted by humans using improved versions of their own technology, the occupiers had no contingency for facing their own weapons. When the suppression fields deactivated, the Terraxians initially cowered before the human liberators. Generations of slavery had conditioned them to fear all other species. Turchen approached them with hands empty and open. We were enslaved too, she explained through translator devices. We fought back and won. Now we offer you the same chance. The Terraxians joined the growing coalition, providing crucial intelligence about Zarkothi supply lines and command structures. As the Liberation Fleet moved deeper into Zarkothi space, they encountered more enslaved species, each with unique abilities and knowledge, each joining the effort with increasing hope. The Zarkothi Empire faced an unprecedented crisis, their carefully ordered expansion disrupted by unpredictable humans using improved versions of their own technology. Worse still, the humans shared everything they learned freely with former slave species, creating a rapidly evolving coalition. Imperial reports to the sovereign became increasingly alarming. The humans appear to seek not conquest, but alliance. They free our resource worlds, but establish no control mechanisms, instead forming cooperative relationships with former assets, contaminating other species with their chaotic adaptability. 5 years after first contact, the movement that began on Earth had transformed into the Galactic Cooperative, 17 liberated species working together, each contributing unique perspectives and abilities to the Alliance. The Tyraxians provided navigation expertise evolved from millennia, mapping stellar phenomena for their former masters. The Vrex contributed bioengineering skills. The Calthi shared weapons technology, developed in secret during their long enslavement. Humanity offered something different: adaptability, creativity, and an unrelenting drive to overcome challenges, qualities dismissed as primitive by the Zarkothi, now recognized as invaluable by their former subjects. Admiral Ortega, commanding the combined liberation fleet, approached the Zarkothi throne world Corvallis, their forces now comprising over 200 vessels from a dozen species. The Zarkothi sovereign faced unprecedented crisis. Nearly 40% of the empire had declared independence or joined the cooperative. Conventional warfare tactics proved ineffective against the unpredictable multispecies coalition. Imperial Guard Commander Velox advocated scorched earth tactics. We must demonstrate consequences, destroy several rebel worlds to force compliance. Senior researcher Mevlak objected. The humans anticipated this strategy. They systematically disabled our planet killer weapons months ago and distributed the neutralization technology to all former subject worlds. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Zarkothi sovereign experienced uncertainty. The final confrontation occurred not through massive space battle, but a direct communication channel opened by Darpachen, now serving as chief xenologist for the cooperative. The image of the sovereign appeared vast and imposing, designed to intimidate lesser beings. Facing Admiral Ortega Chen, Jake Donovan, and representatives from other liberated species. You have disrupted the natural order of the galaxy, the sovereign declared. We brought stability, advancement, purpose to primitive worlds. Chen studied the sovereign with scientific curiosity. You brought stagnation, conformity, and exploitation. Your empire collapsed not from our weapons, but from your inability to adapt. Jake Donovan leaned forward, studying the aliens' tactical displays visible in the background. You never developed contingency plans for defeat, did you? Your entire strategy assumed perfect compliance. No wonder you collapsed when faced with something unpredictable. The sovereign addressed Admiral Ortega directly. Why have you not simply replaced us as conquerors, taken our resources, claimed our worlds as your own? Ortega smiled. Because that was never our goal. We seek alliance, not dominion, cooperation, not control. Concepts your empire cannot comprehend. What humanity offered the galaxy was revolutionary, not a new master, but no master's equality between species, each contributing their unique strengths, each maintaining their sovereignty while working together. The cooperative proposal delivered to the Zarkothi outlined terms for peace, including reparations to former subject worlds, limitations on military capacity, and integration into the new galactic community as equals, not rulers. For 6 generations, the former subjects of the Empire had watched Zarkothi ships arrive at their worlds bringing enslavement. Now they watch human vessels arrive bringing freedom. In the aftermath, as the new galactic order stabilized, Chen continued her research into interspecies cooperation, uncovering remarkable synergies between formerly isolated biological and technological approaches. Jake Donovan established the Cooperative Security Council, teaching former subject species to defend themselves, while Sarah Mackenzie led expeditions to worlds damaged by imperial mining, helping restore ecosystems with techniques developed on Earth. Admiral Ortega represented humanity at the first Cooperative Congress, when the sovereign finally asked the question that had haunted the fallen empire. Why did humans succeed where hundreds of species failed? Her answer became legendary throughout the galaxy. You sought obedient servants but found humans instead. We have spent our entire history overcoming insurmountable odds, adapting to impossible situations, and reimagining what tomorrow might bring. Your empire was simply another challenge to overcome. As the cooperative expanded, former enemies became allies, knowledge freely shared between worlds, technology advancing through collaboration, Rather than coercion, the stars, once symbols of the Zarkothy dominion, became beacons of a new possibility. The species that once sought to enslave humanity had inadvertently unleashed something unprecedented, a force for freedom, cooperation, and endless adaptation that would transform the galaxy forever.